could be strong and start to change some of the practices that kept the women down in their villages.
Women are basically viewed, as they are in very rigid domination systems, as technologies of reproduction. In some of the poorest and most rigidly male-dominated cultures, and they go together, women have no status whatsoever unless they produce a son.
The girl in a poor country, especially the poorest girls, they eat last, they eat least, they get up earliest, they go to bed latest, they do the most work, and they have the least say over what happens in their life.
Women are, in many poor countries, considered property of the man. And in some countries, they have slightly lower status than the cattle. When women are sold into marriage at age 9 or 10, and they become pregnant as soon as they're fertile, they don't have the right or the ability to make decisions about family life or family planning on their own.
"70% of those living in absolute poverty worldwide are female. There is no way, in a humane, non-authoritarian, caring way, to change this overbreeding without raising the status of women worldwide."
After the focus group, I was so moved by Zenit's story and all the hurdles that she has encountered and how she's overcome so many as just a young woman. So I asked if we could go and visit her and her family in the village. You know, looking at her family and meeting her mother and her father, I mean, the first thing that struck me was how much older the dad was than the mother. And then I later learned that she was 12 years old when she married him and he was like 45. Zenit's father had another family before this one where he had 13 children with another wife. And this is a typical, scenario in Ethiopia. They were stuck in these societal roles that had been handed down to them. I couldn't help but see the parallels between my family and Zenit's family. Both of our mothers experienced religious and cultural influences that made them feel like that either they couldn't or shouldn't be the ones deciding how many children their bodies would have.
Christendom has been so powerful because the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, grew up in Christendom. Europeans colonized the rest of the world.
Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. It's time for us to recognize that that's the one biblical commandment where you can say, check, we've done that, what else should we do? I don't see how we can look at the devastation that's happening to the planet and the poor quality of life that many of those people have, and still say that basic levels of birth control and family planning are inappropriate. I find that a morally very confusing stance.
The Vatican actually has permanent observer status in the United Nations. The Roman Catholic Church is the only major religion, the only religion, in fact, that has this kind of status. The permanent observer status is the same as what Switzerland has, for example. The Vatican has tried, or the Holy See has tried very hard in the United Nations to play down contraceptives and, as a matter of fact, to make it more difficult for women to get contraception.
They have made accusations, as they did at Cairo, that these conferences and the plans of action were efforts to undermine the family, destroy Christian civilization. They use very inflammatory rhetoric. The Catholic Church has a wonderful tradition of social justice, whether it's supporting healthcare or hunger programs or disaster relief. For Catholic people living out in the world, family planning is more than just an intellectual exercise. It really affects people's lives very deeply. We ought not be moving forward, anyone on any side of the debate, saying you should have fewer children, you should have more children, you can't do this, you can't do that. You must start with the people whose lives are most directly affected by this, and these are the people you want to talk to about reproductive health.
Some extreme groups want to interpret the Bible as being even more patriarchal than it really is, and use, just as some branches of Islam do, and probably some Hindus do, theological texts to sort of reinforce their deeply felt desire and drive to control women's reproduction. And that's what I think we've got to fight against.
በጣም ሀብታም የሆነ ትልቅ ሰው መጣለ እኔ ባል ማለት ነው እና እኔ በቃ ትልቅ ትምህርት ሰጥቶኛል። የአበባ ህይወት የአበባ ድራማ በቃ ለእኔ ትልቅ ነገር ነው። ምንድነው በቃ አላገባም ያልኩት።
እሷው ናት ያለችን የምትመራቸውም እሷው ናት፣ የምታስተዳድረንም እሷው ናት።
ግን ከዛ በኋላ ምንድነው አባቴ ይሄን ድራማ ያዳምጣል። በጣም ቆጭቶት በቃ ልጄን ያላቻ ጋብቻ ልድራት ነበር። ብድራት ኖሮ ለሱ አሽከር ሆና ነበር የምቀረው፣ ወይም በጣም የብዙ ቤተሰብ ልጅ ትሆን ነበር አሽከር ሆና ነበር የምቀረው ሳትማ እና በጣም ይቆጫል።
እሷ እንደ ታላቅነቷ ማለት ነው ብዙ ነገር ትመክረኛለች፣ እንድማርም ትገፋፋኛለች። የሚቸግረኝን ነገር ከሷ እንድጠይቅ ነው የምትፈልገው ማለት ነው። እሷ ከኔ ሻል ስለምትል
kids and other women from around here can come and ask her how she has changed, how she is this strong, and she gives advice to everybody. I love her.
Oh, it's a great story. She also is like a surrogate mother for her niece. 6 years ago, Zenit's younger sister died of AIDS when this little niece was only 3 months old. So now the niece has AIDS as well and is living with it.